welcome to Weekends with Whitney. Today begins a series of stories that you'll see over the next month of Louisianians taking a bite out of the Big Apple. Our first is Molly Rushing, whose dream for 20 years has been to be on Broadway. 6 months ago, that dream came true. How she landed her role in Anastasia and what it took to do it. Then Kinetics at the Baton Rouge Gallery, how you can buy local art worth thousands of dollars for as little as $100. Then highlights of this year's Hunks and Heels, how they've been able to kick up the fun 5 years running. Plus, Dr. Nick on the power and spirituality of Broadway. But first, how a small town girl from Watson, Louisiana makes it big in the Big Apple.
When she was very young, just beginning to talk, she was singing more than she was talking, and she was dancing more than she was walking.
Molly Rushing gets a rush performing.
I think what has helped is that it's been baby steps.
Molly's baby steps to Broadway began at Jean Lee Dance Studio and singing in church. From there, Baton Rouge Ballet's Dancers Workshop and Theater Baton Rouge. Her first trip to New York set her mind and her heart on Broadway.
I think I was 9, maybe 7.
Okay.
My family took our first trip to New York,
Oh.
and I saw The Phantom of the Opera. And that was the first Broadway show I'd ever seen. And it was the first time I was really able to put a finger on what I want to do and say, oh, that's it. That is what it means to be a singer and a dancer and a performer, and that's what I want to do.
Molly's mom, Jill, knew her little girl was determined.
When we got home, she came in and she had her little notebook and her pencil, and she said, so tell me what I need to do to be on Broadway. I said, well, I guess you need to work on your singing, and she's writing that down, and you need to be a really good dancer. And she just started making a list, and she was probably 8 years old then. So that's when you could really kind of see that she's taking this very seriously.
Throughout high school, Molly performed in more than half a dozen musicals at Theater Baton Rouge and Center Stage Performing Arts Academy. Her role in Peter Pan affirmed her plan.
Just the most magical time. And I was a freshman in high school, and that really solidified my love for theater and the knowledge that I definitely wanted to pursue that as a career.
That decision took family dedication.
The way it worked for years, we'd get home from school around 4, and we had 1 hour, and then we'd get in the car, and she and I would drive to Baton Rouge Dancers Workshop, and we'd meet my husband usually on the interstate coming home, kind of wave. She'd do her homework on the way to dance, and buy flashlights sometimes on the way home.
Were you exhausted?
Yes,
And getting home at, what,
yes.
9, 10 at night?
Yes, or later.
Or
if they were performing, you know, we might be at the Centerplex till midnight, probably till 11. And then by the time we got home, midnight, we just did it.
I think that was really hard for them. Yeah. And I'm incredibly blessed because they supported me every step along the way.
Molly's next step was Oklahoma City University, home to one of the best musical theater programs in the U.S. Right after graduation, she headed to the Big Apple.
A New York or bust.
Really?
Yeah. I actually went there the day after I graduated to find an agent. I was lucky enough to secure a really amazing agent in the city.
Finding a place to live took a little longer.
The first year I lived in New York, I did live in a utility closet that was turned into a bedroom.
Oh my!
But it was a good sized utility closet. And it had its own bathroom and a window. So actually it was a great first New York apartment.
Now, all she needed was her first job.
I was auditioning for, several weeks in the city and, feeling that experience of rejection where you are told no, it's not the right fit. I learned very quickly that you will hear 100 no's before you hear a yes.
Within just a few months, she got her yes, a show at Lincoln Center.
It's a very prestigious space in Manhattan, and I got to do a production of Babes in Toyland, and it ran for 2 nights, and I was actually the lead character. And so that was my big break in New York, my very first job, and it was really, really special.
Then her love of Cinderella came full circle. Here's Molly, only 4 years old, singing it.
I actually got to play Cinderella at a theater, a regional theater right outside of New York. It's called the Gateway. And that was really magical because I have been watching, videos of Cinderella since I was very young. And then I got to sing it, 25 years later as an adult in a beautiful gown. So that was definitely a dream come true.
That role helped her land her first show on Broadway in March, Anastasia. She's a member of the ensemble, plays the teenage Anastasia, and is the cover for the adult lead role of Anastasia.
The cover is an understudy, and if Anastasia is ever sick or out of the show, play her role, yes. But I also have my own, what we call track in the show, as someone in the ensemble.
The show's been a huge hit since opening night.
Full houses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the audience is so responsive at the end of the show when the curtain goes down. We actually have some actors who put in earplugs because when we go out for curtain call, the noise is so tremendous. And the screaming and the clapping, and it's really, we feel so supported every night.
For Jill, seeing her daughter on the Broadway stage opening night was surreal.
You have to pinch yourself to see those dreams come true is just, it's just wonderful.
It's funny because our theater at Anastasia, we're at the Broadhurst Theater, and it is right next door to where the Phantom of the Opera plays, the Majestic Theater. And I go out on the fire escape all the time and I can see the sign, and that's where, I discovered my dream, and it's pretty amazing that now I get to perform, right next door.
Is it what you thought it would be?
Oh, it is. Yeah, it really is. This dream doesn't happen for everyone. There are a lot of hopefuls who move to New York. And it was definitely painful at times when you're going through season of booking jobs, and then you'll go through season of not getting work. And I think everyone experiences that. So it can be really hard and it can be really painful. But then when it's all worth it in the end and you see the dream come true.
However, the work to keep living the dream never stops.
You are always learning, and you have to always be bettering your skills. Because you're never at your peak. I am constantly in voice lessons, constantly in dance lessons. It's so expensive. I mean, some voice teachers in New York cost as much as $500 an hour.
For people who are going to New York, what would be your advice? Who want to break into Broadway? They want to do what you do. What would you say?
My advice is to train as much as you possibly can before you get to New York, because as we've said, it's very expensive to train in the city.
Yeah.
So I really think that having the foundation of training I had helped me so that when I did get to New York, I was able to go to auditions and feel very confident. And then I really just have to say to people, you just have to go. You just have to do it. And you have to know that it's going to be hard. And I would say the first 6 months of living in New York City, you are not going to feel comfortable. You know, it's going to take a while to find your people, to find your community, to find an apartment that isn't a closet space. But if you really do go for it, I think that it's worth it. You learn so much about yourself, so much about the world. And then specifically, you know, trying to get on Broadway, my advice is just to keep going. Yeah, through the no's, through the rejection, and keep working on your skills and just keep showing up. And eventually you might get that one show that changes your life.
If you're in New York, you can catch Molly on Broadway through at least March. If they extend the show, it'll be even longer. And make sure that you join us next week when we'll take you behind the scenes at the Metropolitan Opera. How Louisiana's Arnold Rawls is taking the opera world by storm, and you on a secret tour of the fun. But coming up next on today's show, how this first-time event, Brunch Fest, is opening the art world to new and veteran collectors at the Baton Rouge Gallery. Plus, head over heels with the 5th annual Hunks in Heels, why the guys are pumping it up. Then Dr. Nick on the power of performance as Weekends with Whitney continues.
Each morning in Baton Rouge, we rise to meet opportunity. We carry the weight of responsibility proudly. We choose our paths. We move fast and we fly high. We light the way for others to follow. We make it happen. But what really matters is what happens when we land at home. Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport. Fly easy.
Welcome back to Weekends with Whitney. Once a year, you get a chance to buy art worth thousands of dollars for as little as $100. Here's everything you need to know about how to get it and why getting it is vital to one local treasure. Folks worked up an appetite as they hungered for art at the Baton Rouge Gallery's first Brunch Fest. It was action, adventure, and previewing art for auction in its upcoming event, Kinetics. Lily Allen's gotten in on it for years.
Supporting the community, the arts. I mean, what's better than that? You can come back with some great cachet of beautiful things, and you can see the people who just make this community even more vital.
Kinetics vital to everything that happens here in the contemporary art world.
The area's premier live art auction will end up having over 30 works of art from some of the area's best artists up for bid, and everything starts at $100. One of the best things about Kinetics is that every piece, no matter how big or small, which artist is behind the piece, everything starts at $100 and goes up from there, and it really gets the auction going. It's a lot of fun, it's fast-paced, people start getting competitive with their bidding.
Glass-blown sculptures, photography, and paintings are just some of the mediums in this year's auction. One of Rob Carpenter's monoliths will be up for grabs too.
From afar you say, oh, look at that gray blob over there. But then when you walk over and start looking at that gray blob, there's a lot of stuff going on there. They're drawings that are very carefully built up over layers and layers and layers.
Tens of thousands of lines and dashes create it. He begins by using a tool to draw a 1-inch grid. After that, everything is free-handed. It takes 6 weeks, working 5 hours every day to create each work of art. He doesn't use paintbrushes, he uses drafting pens.
They don't even make them anymore. Because people they don't do hand drafting anymore. Everything is done with a computer. So these pens that I use are 20, 30 years old. They're kind of like an old car. You have to kind of crank them up a little bit before they start working properly. When I make these drawings, they are very meditative to me. And so I hope that when people start to take a close look at these drawings that I make, it'll give them a similar kind of sense of calm and peace. And we need a little bit of that in the world today. So.
The Baton Rouge Gallery recently celebrated its 50th anniversary. But every week, someone comes in who didn't know this city park treasure existed.
My favorite thing about the gallery is really the accessibility of it. We're here, we're open to the public, we're free of charge, 6 days a week from noon to 6.
New art is always at your fingertips.
So, but there are so many, 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 many people. I mean, look at, just right here, you see A Foggy Day by Catherine Lemoyne. And all around here, it's changeable, it's beautiful, and it's life.
The annual art auction gives it financial life.
It is our one fundraiser of the year, so that one night, the support that we get from the community during that one night is something that helps bankroll and make possible 12 different exhibitions throughout the year, a ton of different programming, and really helps make the gallery accessible for people throughout the city.
Heather Sewell Day wouldn't miss it.
Such a great way to come and kind of get your feet wet in the art world and get a few new pieces on your wall, and for a really good cause and a really good time.
It's a kinetic connection.
For us, the big thing is just trying to connect artists and audience in any and every way we can.
Kinetics kicks off Friday, November 10th at 7 p.m. For tickets, go to BatonRougeGallery.org. And speaking of kicks, there were plenty of them at last week's 5th anniversary of Hunks and Heels. Here are some of the highlights. Hopefully, it'll be back for year 6 next year. Up next, Dr. Nick on the power and spirituality of the stage as Weekends with Whitney continues.
Maggio, the only way to go. Maggio Buick GMC, your satisfaction's our specialty. We really deliver on Falls River, here in New Roads. Small town atmosphere, legendary service for over 60 years. Maggio, the only way to go. The only way to go, that's Maggio.
9-time winner of the prestigious Buick GMC Mark of Excellence Award. As Molly Rushing told us earlier, there is a magic for her that is Broadway. But it is magical and spiritual for those who are going to see the shows. Dr. Nick joins us this morning with more.
Love Broadway.
And you were
Love
talking about
Broadway.
the mental health aspects of it.
Whitney, for some of us, Broadway is analogous to someone's love for LSU football.
Yeah.
The theater has such power. And yes, it's spiritual power, it's mental health power. Ritual, you know, think of religion and spirituality and the rituals and all. There's ritual in theater.
How so?
We go because you have a line that you're waiting to get in. You all go in together like cattle. You get your little playbill, which is like an order of worship. You go take your seat. The curtain's opened. You're both entertained and yet also participating. And if you don't leave being moved in some fashion, either comically, like say hairspray.
Oh yeah, or kinky boots.
Or kinky boots. Yeah. Or if you're not moved deeply spiritually, like is in The Color Purple, or even Wicked.
Oh,
I mean,
I cry every time I see Wicked.
I've been going to New York since 1983, and you can see all these. These are just a few of the 70 posters that I've collected over the years, and Does
that mean you've seen 70 shows?
Oh, if not more, not more. And yet I've never seen Hamilton. But I look forward to it. I think it will come at some time. It took me a long time to see Wicked. You saw Wicked before me. Oh. But when I saw it at the end of the first act, I remember crying. I mean, there's something deeply, deeply moving about Broadway theater. And
may I say, too, that sometimes we have Broadway traveling shows that come here to the River Center. Certainly the Sanger has a beautiful array of and season that they have.
Yes.
And Leonard Augustus is a member and said, Whitney, I'm telling you, I've seen some of the same shows on Broadway and some of the same traveling shows, and honestly, they're equally as good, which is, I think, stunning.
Sure.
But I think it speaks to the talent.
Yes,
that
it does.
Is out there.
It does speak to the talent. One of the problems that I think I have is that I can develop a certain kind of elitism, or like Broadway is really where it's at. and I think it's fair to say, as we talk about theater, Whitney, we have good theater here. You and I saw a great show when we saw the Beauty and the Beast. Sister Act is getting ready to come on. I never saw that on Broadway, but I bet you it will probably be a good show here to boost the local as well. But I would still say that if you want to experience theater at its finest, it will always be Broadway.
I think
you're right. It will always be Broadway.
But you told me something that I found shocking, is that I thought I thought the musical started in London.
No, I think it's like 1866, I read somewhere, where a 5.5-hour musical came out. That's a little long. But that was the beginning of the musical. And you'll still hear, what do you think of when you think Broadway? You think musical. I mean, there are the heavies.
Singing, dancing,
but even
acting.
Phantom, look at that as a musical, and that was drama. Les Mis, tremendous drama, but musical. A Hairspray, you know, and there's another beauty about Broadway too, is that you're entertained, but as I was saying, you're also participant. You're in it, just like you would hope to be in it in any kind of religious experience or spiritual experience.
True, it takes into it.
Yes, and what's interesting about both theater and religious experience is you're in some ways you're escaping from reality. You're not in your element anymore. You're in someone else's element, and yet it touches you because of the universal experience. Don't you think?
I do.
You can't see a Broadway show without somehow, if it's great. I mean, there are some pretty rotten ones that don't last very long, which is the sadness because it takes so much to create a production.
Oh, I know. I'm thankful I've never seen one of those.
Yes, we've been very fortunate. But there's one other thing that I think is so fascinating about Broadway and the mental health aspect of it, is that you can be doing all sorts of things. You walk into the show at 5 minutes to 8, and you'll be out at 10:30, and there's New York waiting for you.
You're right.
It's like, again, almost its own liminal moment. You go to the theater, and then you come back into the world. So it's an escape from reality, but it's also an immersion into reality, and then you come out to this great city that's waiting for you, by the way, with its own theater.
Ooh, right.
Have you ever thought of New York as a stage?
No,
Think of New York, of course.
But of course.
Of course. You just walk down the streets and you're watching. Someone said that in New York there is no typical American.
That's right.
Isn't that great? There is no typical. Everybody, you just
can be anyone.
You're just like you walk into a pizza shop and it's a theatrical experience. Again, I don't want to take away from Broadway, but remember, it's immersed in such a great city.
You know what we should do?
I'm ready.
We should plan a Broadway getaway, like a big group trip, like people who want to go and people who want to see some things, line up some shows, make it a 4 or 5 day event and do it.
And then add to that, which I really love, afterwards, we've got to talk about it.
Oh, yes.
We've got to discuss it. We've got to open it up. Because again, too many times we'll go to an experience of theater and we walk out and we've let it go. I think everything needs to be discussed. All of these shows, The Jersey Boys, great show, Phantom of the Opera, Hairspray, Color Purple. These are just a few.
Just a few.
But they're all reality that needs to be opened, as any religious elemental experience would be, so that it affects our behavior and our attitude and our lifestyle.
Yeah, I love to see
Do you think I like Broadway?
I think you like it just a little bit. I could hardly get a word in.
I'm sorry.
I'm teasing. I'm
sorry.
teasing. No,
well,
I want
tell
you
us
to.
real quickly about Wicked, because I know that was one of your favorites.
Oh, one of my favorites forever. And Something Good. That song, Something Good. I'm better because
Because I've met you, the friendship song.
Yes, yes. Even though they were rivals at first and then friends and then they went their separate ways and I just, there's so much power in it.
Power of, again, music. And you just listen to this and you're moved.
Thanks,
Good
Dr.
talking
Nick.
with you.
More Weekends with Whitney after this. Atlas Foundation Repair, fixing your foundation problems for more than 30 years while preserving and protecting your trees. Thanks for sharing part of your day with us here on Weekends with Whitney. We hope to see you back here again next week when we take you for that rare behind-the-scenes look at the Lincoln Center's Metropolitan Opera House. And our tour guide is Louisiana opera sensation Arnold Rawls. Until then, we leave you with this.